overview of a, of a year in crop production regarding how that works in Wisconsin and what farmers face kind of in a day-to-day situation as we go through a full year. So you'll find that a farmer's day is definitely different from day to day, and especially as that gets into crop production, as we have a very variable growing season as we work through in agriculture in Wisconsin. So just a little bit about myself. I am from local of Chippewa County, so I've been serving Extension for about 27 years now, and more recently been with Dunn and Eau Claire County as we've moved into more of a regional model. Grew up on a 300-acre dairy farm and had about 90 cows, so I've had pretty vast experience and did that full time right out of college for about 10 years prior to coming to Extension. And so I've had quite a bit of experience from a dairy farmer standpoint, which includes crop production. But since I've been a crops and soils educator here in Chippewa County or Northwest Wisconsin for all these years, definitely have been exposed to a lot of different types of crop production as far as management practices and things like that. You've probably heard from Extension that if you're not familiar with over these last few days with Extension, we are a cooperative type of educators with the Division of Extension, UW-Madison. So, and the cooperative part is many of us are co-funded or have some funds from counties that have invested in a local agriculture educator, whether that's dairy, livestock, crops and soils, horticulture. And so we've had that model for over 100 years now, and that's been part of our process of trying to get UW research either on farms or get that information out to farmers. So in my specific role, not just the educational piece, but we also do quite a bit of on-farm research. I'm not going to go into a lot of that since that's probably not what a farmer is typically going to do, a lot of that research part of it, but just wanted to give you a background of where I'm coming from and my experiences working as growing up on a farm, farming for about 10 years on our family farm, and then being part of Extension for the last 27 years. So a day in the life of a farmer on the crop production side is that no 2 days are going to be the same. I think that's the way it is in several of our own jobs, is that day to day they are definitely different. But especially in crop production, as we move from season to season, there's definitely different roles farmers are going to be playing, different jobs that need to be done. And so as the growing season progresses or as we go through a full year, that's kind of what I'm going to try to I formatted this talk this morning kind of around going through a full year of production that a farmer might be facing as they go through a full growing season. So again, they're very seasonal depending on what time of year we're in and what the responsibilities of that farmer are as things need to get done. There's many crops, rotations, and management. You can go to two neighbors that are farmers, and they'll be completely different in how they manage. Not just from the cropping side of it, but if they happen to have cattle or livestock or into dairy, they're going to definitely manage that differently from day to day. And so you're going to see many crops and rotations that are possible within a county or within a neighborhood, even for that matter. And then it all boils down to the decision-making part and how those decisions get implemented. And so as we go through some of the slides here in this growing season that I've kind of set up, we'll look at some of the decisions that need to be made, some of those actual jobs, the work that needs to be done in order to grow that crop successfully, and if it's to be fed to livestock or stored and marketed later as a commodity. We'll kind of touch on some of those things as we go through this year of crop production. So again, as they make decisions, farmers maybe get one chance to make that decision, and then they may be stuck with that decision for the rest of that growing season. And in some cases, that decision might even linger longer than a year, especially if there's cattle involved or if there's marketing and storage of the grain needed, those kind of things, depending on what that commodity is or what that crop is that farmer is growing. So the decision-making part is kind of where we're going to focus some of our time today is what needs to be thought about and those decisions as this growing season unfolds. So I thought we'd start today. A lot of times our growing season, we think about, let's just start in the spring when the seeds go in the ground or the crop needs to be, the fields need to be tilled up and planted. But let's start where we are today. What's going on today and what are farmers dealing with as of today? So right now we're seeing mainly into corn grain harvest. So the photo here is of soybean being harvested. Most of our soybeans are harvested at this point. We typically see soybeans being harvested late September, early October, and then farmers will move into harvesting corn for grain. So if we're to start our season today, this is what's going on pretty much out in most of the fields around Wisconsin, whether you're from the north or the south part of the state. Some of these processes might be wrapped up already, but for the most part, there's probably some corn that's being harvested for dry grain. And farmers focus primarily on corn right now. The moisture is a big part of that. So the later a farmer can wait into the harvest season, into that late October, maybe into the early part of November, like we are now, the drying costs will be less. So corn, we need to dry that down. Gets it into maybe that the low 20s, upper teens. If you could get that corn harvested around 17, 18% moisture, that helps drying costs. So to store grain for long term, most of that grain has to be around 15% to be stored for several months, probably down around 13% in order to store for over a year. So farmers will dry that grain based on when they're planning to market it. But in a season like this, where we've had kind of an earlier planting season for the most part, or at least on time, there was some late planting around the state, but for the most part, we were in pretty good shape. But looking at the drying cost part, that's where farmers might be saving some dollars now since we've had warmer temperatures, it's been drier. Farmers have been able to get in the field and get the soybeans and corn harvested. And so that also reduces the costs of drying. So there's going to be either natural gas or propane used in these dryers in order to dry the grain, to get it down to a moisture that will store without mold or any mildew, mold and quality issues with that grain. So that's the thing that's going on right now. You'll probably see combines like in the picture here that look a little different harvesting the corn, but for the most part, it's the same machine. A lot of wagons, tractors, carts, semis out on the fields trying to get the grain off. So also what you might be seeing is some planters out there, maybe some drills or some planters, and you're wondering, why are they planting this time of year? Well, cover crops are a major component of our kind of our soil conservation, doing some things like that. So we'll look at late planted crops, the cover crops as well, dealing with the cereal winter crops, or winter rye, and some of these winter crops as well. We'll also look at manure application. That's happening or might be wrapping up wherever you are in the state, as well as some of the soil testing and nutrient management sides of things. And then when we get all of these things wrapped up, winterizing equipment, we're trying to beat Jack Frost, or as we get into freeze up or snow on the way, farmers want to get that wrapped up as soon as possible. So these are some of the projects that farmers are dealing with right now in late fall. So with this corn and soybean harvest, there's going to be longer hours. You'll probably see headlights out in the field or lights in the field to help these farmers go a little bit longer during the day. We got early sunset, so these hours are going to be much longer. There's very dusty and dry conditions out there. Sometimes you'll even see a fire hazard risk. Maybe not so much in Wisconsin, as we maybe don't have those larger fields where combines are out there hours and hours, day after day, where they don't get cleaned out. But there can be combine fires. Fields can be lit on fire when we have these very dry conditions like we might have within these fields or within the machinery itself. And then this grain storage management, we'll touch on that a little bit, as well as, like I said, if trying to get it dry as we going into this growing and wrapping up the growing season at this time of year. So the grain storage management starts to get a plan in place, getting it dry enough, getting enough, knowing the capacity that the bins have and how many bushels are in each of those bins. And then, of course, we have equipment on the road. So again, you're going to see more hazards out there in terms of larger equipment on the roads. There's going to be tractors, semis, combines, that kind of thing. So, from a farmer's standpoint, these are the kind of things they're dealing with right now, but there also can be the rewarding side of it. It looks like, yeah, there's a lot of work here and things going on as the season typically wraps up from a harvest standpoint, but it can be rewarding seeing that harvest come in. So, in the photos here, if you're not familiar with the grain storage part of it, farmers usually harvest, uh, put them in wagons, carts, semis, and then it goes into a facility like here in the lower right-hand corner, where it's a grain handling facility. Farmers might have that storage on their farm themselves, and that's where the drying and storage costs start to come into play. But overall, right now, that's pretty much the busy season. You'll maybe see these facilities, maybe some steam coming out, especially if you're commuting in the morning or anything like that. Crossed by some of these facilities, you might see steam coming out, and that's that dryer that's taking the moisture out so it can be stored longer term. Going back into the late planted cover crops, like I said, you might see some drills out there. I took this picture just the other day at my house, and the farmer that rents the fields right next to my house, he was out there planting. This was just last Friday. He was out there. And so putting in cover crops, again, these are some conservation type practices, whether, again, it's just that cereal rye that might be planted this time of year. They just need it to get germinated and it'll be nice and green in the spring. It can help with the soil conservation, reduce erosion, increase the soil biology. You might be hearing that out there in some of the agriculture publications or seeing that. We're trying to see if different crops that are out there can stimulate soil biology, maybe reduce those the amount or increase the amount of biodiversity, some of the release some of the more nutrients that might be captured in the soil, those kind of things. And then there's the potential to any nitrate or nitrogen that's left over from the growing season. These crops can pull it up and maybe hold it so it doesn't leach into our groundwater and cause a water quality issue. So farmers are definitely adapting the cover crop systems, and the photo on the right here is just a mix of different types of cover crops. Sometimes there's radishes in there, sometimes there's winter rye, some of the winter cereal grains are put in this time of year. So it all depends what the goal of that farmer is, if it's just soil conservation, if it's to build soil biology, or if it's to capture some of that nitrate nutrient that might escape over the winter. This is a way to do that with cover crops. So it looks all great, and from the environmental side, and it definitely helps us. But the farmer has expenses with doing this, and so there's seed, labor, and equipment that goes along with this. So the farmer in this picture with the drill and the tractor right here, that is an opportunity for more costs. That farmer could have wrapped up the growing season, had his grain in the bin, and been done for the year. But he's decided that this conservation part of it, capturing nutrients, is important to him. So they're willing to pay that extra for the seed, labor, and equipment that's going to take to put that cover crop in. So as you drive around Wisconsin, you may see fields that were harvested, but now they're green. And why are we planting so late? It's to get the cover crops planted in order to accomplish some of these conservation or environmental benefit goals. Then the other thing that's happening now as well, you might see a lot of manure application going on. So you'll see most dairy farms, or if it's swine, there's liquid systems. So you'll see these tankers and different systems being used to pump or haul liquid manure out. And so trying to get these storage units emptied at this time of year is fall and spring. So we usually see the manure application increase quite a bit in the fall. It's a good time to empty that manure pit, the storage unit, whatever it is. So there's enough room for the manure over the winter time. And so in a lot of times, we'll talk about nutrient management here in a little bit, but there might be regulation that you can only apply in fall and spring. There's no winter application. So winter application can happen. It can be limited depending on the permits that some farms have, or if they have more of a solid type of manure like poultry or beef. Sometimes that can be emptied this time of year before the snow flies and gets incorporated into the soil. So the photos here kind of show what happens with manure application. There's usually a lagoon or some kind of structure that holds the manure, and this is an agitation boat. And so the boat actually mixes, floats around in there. It's remote controlled. So the operator might be sitting in his pickup several feet away from the edge of the pit, but just operating this boat remotely, and it moves around, floats around in the pit, gets it all agitated with these high pressure nozzles, and then gets pumped out to systems that might be a hose system like you're seeing here, or put into semis and tankers and applied that might have some kind of injection equipment behind it. So for liquid manure, typically applied more uh, surface applied, and then another piece of tillage equipment goes through and incorporates that into the soil so we don't have runoff issues. Or these hose drag systems, basically what you're seeing in the picture injects it right into the soil through these large hose and drag line system, these toolbars, so to speak, behind here, help to inject that manure into the soil. So this tractor might run out in that field all day as long as those pumps are pumping the manure from this pit. And then the poultry and beef side, a lot of times that's more dry material. There could be stacks of it or barns full of it. Gets hauled out and is usually surface applied, broadcast across the field, and then incorporated with tillage equipment. So manure application is definitely something that the livestock and dairy operators and farmers are dealing with. If it hasn't gone out already, it's going to go out very soon as the crop comes off and some nutrients can be reapplied. And so as we get into the nutrient management side of the discussion today, we could talk a little bit more about that. A couple of things that farmers do wrestle with as we deal with these large units is manure gases. So there's 4 of them that can be very lethal to farmers or cause them to be sick. But we've had some tragedies in Wisconsin where we've lost farmers, sons, daughters, wives to manure gases because as it gets agitated or within these lagoons, there can be quite a release of these gases immediately following the agitation of these or any confined spaces as well that these gases can be trapped in. So farmers have to be aware of the manure gas issue. And then this transportation, they're on the road a lot, especially if they're not using the hose drag system like I showed earlier. Tractors, tankers, semis, you can see here there's these dumpsters that are now popular. Semis don't even have to go into the field. They'll dump into this dumpster, and then there's a pump that pulls it out into that drag line system that I showed on the other slide. And so we have a lot of transportation. If it's not with a hose drag system, they're going to directly from the pit, they're going to be using tankers to dump into something like this as a dumpster and then get it pumped out. So with all of this, there is a spill runoff risk as that increases whenever we're hauling that manure. Sometimes in rare instances, these storage structures could break or get a leak. But in many cases, the spill or runoff issue becomes from this transportation issue, or we see runoff risk that the application rate was too high, or the weather changed. There was a heavy rainfall and moved that manure off site. So Extension, we've got a manure applicator training program where we talk about how to mitigate spills and risk of liquid manure runoff. So again, just something that farmers need to be aware of and they're dealing with at this time of year. So then talked about soil testing and nutrient management. So in the fall is usually the best time to do soil testing. The crop has been removed. There's not going to be any real change in the soil nutrient content unless manure is applied or there's still a crop growing out there like a cover crop. But for the most part, most of the nutrients won't change from now until spring. And so it's a good time to do the soil testing and plan for that nutrient management side. So in Wisconsin, the SNAP Plus program, it's a free program farmers can use or hire someone as a consultant. Extension also provides some of that in order to put a nutrient management plan together. So what does my soil test say? How much nutrient can I apply from either nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, whatever that limiting nutrient is that can be applied? The soil test will tell that. So in many cases, farms have to look about every 4 years in order to have that soil tested to stay in compliance, maybe with some of the cost share dollars they have or some of the farm programs that they're enrolled in. So it's based on the soil tests, and then whatever that crop might need or remove, that's kind of where the rate comes in on how much nutrient to apply, whether that's manure, taking legume credits, or actually using commercial fertilizer. So the crop rotation becomes very important in terms of how this nutrient management plan gets together. What was grown there? What were the nutrients added? How much nutrient was removed? And what's the next crop going to be? Sometimes that will have to change as we get into spring. But right now, farmers are probably, if they need to be soil testing or they're within that after that 4-year window, they're probably either doing that themselves or they're hiring a consultant or someone to get out there to soil test in order to put the nutrient management plan together so they can kind of fine tune that commercial fertilizer need or where their manure needs to go. So again, it gets back to that profitability. If I can use my on-farm nutrients like legume credits and manure, I can actually reduce what I need to buy the next year for any nitrogen or nutrient needs that the crop might have. So that's what this software does. There's also ways to do it by hand, but this software Snap Plus works pretty good for putting the fields in, putting the crop rotation in, and it kind of tells you what you need to, how many nutrients can be applied. And so we've really focused on this, the 4 R's of nutrient management. So it's basically the right type of nutrient, whether it's commercial fertilizer or manure, legume credit. So you'd have the right source of manure. You'd have the rate at which it should be applied at the right time of year, and it's put in the right place. So again, is it surface applied and incorporated? Is it injected? Does it stay on the surface if it's a no-till farmer? These kind of things all come into play. But the nutrient management part that we've really focused on, if farmers can focus on those 4 R's of nutrient management, we can get the nutrients where they need to go at the right time and reduce any environmental impact of that nutrient being added to our fields. So again, soil testing, like we said, that's going to be based on those. Everything's going to be driven by a soil test. If you're not familiar with it, we have a probe or something like this that we would drive into the ground about 6 to 8 inches, depending on, again, management of the fields and what that crop's going to be. And then farmers will get that tested and look at what those nutrient needs are. So again, planning we'll be doing that this fall as farmers come off, but the soil testing is definitely happening at this time of year to get the results back. And then we have the winter to kind of plan for the nutrient applications next growing season. And then the final thing that's probably happening as we wrap up kind of this time of year is the cleaning and harvesting equipment, cleaning it out, getting it. And you get the picture here shows a farmer with a leaf blower trying to get all that dust and dirt, whatever it is, maybe weed seeds. So it's a way we can maybe limit invasive species or moving weed seeds around that are some weed species that might be hard to control. So as equipment moves from field to field, or if it's a custom operator that does this for a living and goes from farm to farm and does it for different farmers, they're encouraged to clean out that equipment each time they move to a different field or a different farm. But it basically gets that equipment is expensive, and we do a lot of maintenance with it here in the fall in order to make sure it's winterized and it's ready for winter storage, so to speak. The one thing that maybe doesn't get a lot of winterizing, or it gets winterized but used all winter, might be tractors or manure spreaders, those kind of things, depending on the type of operation that farm is. But for the most part, farmers are going to be handling oils and antifreezes, these kind of things, doing basic maintenance to get this equipment ready for winter. Any repairs, if they don't do it now, they make a list. If they don't have the funds or the dollars to fix the equipment right now, they might make a list of what needs to be done to that combine or that harvesting equipment, since it's only used a couple months out of the year and sits for the remainder of the season. And then dairy and livestock farms, they might continue to apply manure throughout the winter, depending on how big of if they run out of storage, they may have emergency type of permit in order to put some manure out in the winter. Otherwise, small farms with more solid manure might be able to continue to apply that manure as we go through the winter. So that's kind of what's happening now as we got towards winter. And then what goes on in the winter to spring from crop production in Wisconsin. It's got to be a pretty quiet time of the year, right? Nothing's growing. We're not harvesting. Everything's under snow or frozen. So what are farmers doing? So from winter to spring, they'll be planning for that crop rotation. They'll be looking at their crop budgets. Grain marketing, if they're specifically a commodity grower like corn and soybeans or a small grain like oats, barley, or wheat, they'll probably, this crop is in storage. There's probably some grain marketing plans being developed as well. They'll be monitoring grain condition in terms of that grain bin, and there's grain bin safety, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Dairy and livestock farms, again, day-to-day operation, making sure those animals are fed and healthy, and they're going to track that feed inventory. So maybe it's more of an animal science type of thing, but from the crop production side, the feed and the forage went in, how much is coming out, and do we have enough feed to get through the winter and until that next growing season kicks in? They'll secure some crop inputs, and also there's some certification and training. So farmers are still maybe not as hectic as terms of planting and growing and harvesting season, but there's still quite a bit of activity that needs to be done over the winter for all these types of farms. So planning for the crop rotation. Part of this is, what crops are going to be planted in which fields. Again, going back to that nutrient management plan, the crop rotation. If it was corn silage, is it going to be hay the next year? Is it going to be soybeans following corn? Are we going to try to add a small grain? Do we add a winter wheat or a small grain like barley or oats to something like this? And then the conservation goals. Again, back to those cover crops. Are we going to invest in that? Are certain fields going to get cover crops or not? So a lot of planning goes into play as well. And then, we've struggled recently with prices. So corn prices, soybean prices are down. Does a farmer want to add a new enterprise? And so things like malting barley, industrial hemp. This picture on the right over here is kernza, which is a small grain used for some breads and things like that. So is there a new enterprise? Farmers may be looking at their farm profitability and saying, well, we're not making any money on corn and soybeans. Do we need to market better, or is there a different crop we need to add? So now is that time of year that farmers might be making those decisions, seeing what yields are. How did we break even? Did we make money? Did we lose money? Or is there another opportunity out there in order to get into something different? And then do we consider establishing those perennial crops? So do we take a field and put it instead of an annual grain crop? Do we put it into alfalfa, grass, clover, those kind of things? Do we get into selling feed or forages, that kind of thing? So there's a lot of planning for the crop rotation going on in this winter to spring time frame as well. And then a biggie is to calculate the crop budgets. So after the year's all done, you've got it's either in storage, the crop like corn and soybeans is in storage. Have you sold some? What's the bottom line looking like for this growing season? So they'll estimate, what those input costs are, or for 2026, for 2025, they may be looking back and saying, did we spend too much money on fertilizer? Did we spend too much money on seed? Those kind of things. So they start to calculate to see where that, using a budget tool, we have an enterprise budget tool that Extension has created. And I just put a screenshot of what it might look like in terms of maybe the bottom half of that spreadsheet, but you put in all your costs. And then that'll calculate where those break even is. You put your yield in, maybe what you're going to hopefully sell that crop for, or if you have a contract to sell that grain, it comes out, did I make money or not? And in this case, if we looked at what I had put in earlier, actually we lost money in this scenario where prices were down, we maybe spent too much on inputs, those kind of things. So most are using some kind of tool, and it could be a notebook or something, but they have the bills that they paid, or they've if it's accounts payable, whatever it is, what did it cost me to grow that crop or that acre or that bushel based on my yield? And so we look at what the current costs are and prices. So the more accurate a farmer can be in looking at those crop budgets, the better they can get fine tune where they may want to cut some costs, or is there a way they can increase yield in some way? And so these budget tools, not only they can be sensitive to price changes. So we put kind of a tool in there. If prices go up 10% or down 10%, we can make those changes, and it kind of tells us what happens on that farm if we don't get the prices we want, or we get more than what we thought about. So sometimes doing these crop budgets, farmers might say, "Well, I don't want to know. I know it's bleak, but let's see if we can't fine tune this a little better." But it does increase stress over the winter. Are we going to put this crop in or that crop in? How did we do this year? And so a lot of that analysis is going to be going on from the winter to spring. Like I said, grain marketing plans as well. That's a biggie if they're specifically in the commodity market of growing corn and soybeans, maybe some of the small grains. Basically, you need a strategy to market at a profitable price. What's my cost of production using that tool? And then what if there's an opportunity to forward contract or price the grain early enough that I can capture a price movement or something that says, oh, this is a profitable price for me. I'm going to sell so many bushel or forward contract or whatever it is. So you can have very simple ways of marketing your grain and just by selling it and just taking whatever the market's offering that day, or you can forward contract or get very fancy with some of your marketing tools. But it's basically to try to take the risk out of the market. You know what you're going to get, you know what you paid in your bills and what your cost of production is. And so now I know if I have a profitable price. There's a lot of online tools and like we said, speculation. You can read a lot of things on social media or online to get where the market might go. And then, of course, you have what the government might do in terms of USDA making decisions and things like that. Right now, USDA being shut down, we don't get a lot of data because they're not collecting it. In extension, we do have a resource called Farm Pulse. And if you just search Farm Pulse Wisconsin, that's our grain marketing program that you can take a peek at. The other thing going on in the winter is monitoring grain condition. Again, when we have these steel bins out there in the winter, that the steel gets very cold, so the outside of the grain is very cool. And as we warm up in the spring, that grain has to be warmed up. Otherwise, you'll get condensation along the walls, and then you'll have poor condition of the grain. It'll get moldy. There can be insects in there, these kind of things that might be a problem. Then that farmer gets docked prices, a lower price for the corn that he's is being brought in. So anytime there's storage of grain, the winter it stores well, but in the spring there can be condensation in these steel bins, and you have to be able to blow air in there, warmer air even as the air temperature warms up, in order to equilibrate or yeah, make an equilibrium of the temperature from the outside and the inside. So a lot of farmers might be marketing that grain throughout the winter. So you'll see transportation to elevators, farms, the buyers, depending on who needs that grain, either sold or bought. And then again, the market side of it, we got lots of charts and things like that. And these two charts here just show what the average prices are for the year, based on by the month that they move through. And so you can always see as we get later we've had better years in 2021 to 2023. Basically, we've had pretty good years, and now we're on the downward trend of seeing those prices. So farmers will use these kind of tools and marketing strategies in order to try to capture a better price. And then they'll track feed inventory. So if they have livestock, again, they're going to continually monitor how much feed is going out. They maybe know how much went in, how much is each animal eating. And so they're using that forage and feed that's used from storage throughout winter and spring to see what they're going to have left before the next growing season starts, or when that first harvest can come in until May or June. So if we have alfalfa, some of the hay crops, we may not be harvesting until the 1st of June. So our feed inventory has to last that long. Unless we have a pasture situation or grazing, we could maybe get those cattle out there earlier in order to harvest some of those early growing grasses. And so we have tools for feed inventory estimates, things like that can help that farmer track what's going on that farm and how much feed is actually going into those animals. The other thing that they're doing in that winter spring is securing the crop inputs for that for next year, 2026 growing season. What is needed to get that crop in the ground? If we made money, are we going to put that into equipment, land rent? Are we going to buy new land, more land if land becomes available? Where is our inputs going to go for this next growing season? Maybe the neighbor's retiring, or there's an absentee landowner that wants a new renter. So farmers will be strategizing at this time of year if they're going to pick up new land, give up land, that kind of thing, in order to know how much seed and fertilizer, things like that they need. So most farmers over the winter will be securing an operating loan. A lot of farmers will operate from year to year, basically with um, uh, those variable costs. So again, seed, fertilizer, fuel, labor, those kind of things go into an operating loan, or again, the variable costs that a farmer might have some control of. There's fixed costs, which is basically taxes, depreciation, insurance, those kind of things that no matter if you grew the crop or not, you're going to pay for them. And so that's a fixed cost. The operating loan is mainly to cover those variable costs. Again, back to seed, fertilizer, fuel, those kind of things, equipment that might need to go into um, if new equipment's needed, those kind of things. But for the most part, the operating loan is what's needed to get that crop in the ground for that year. You're going to pay for crop insurance. Are you going to roll the dice that, there's some pretty good crop insurance programs. It costs some premiums. Sometimes you get that money back. Sometimes you don't. If margins are tight, do I pay for crop insurance or not? And then, like I said, land rent becomes a biggie too. A lot of contracts with landowners and farmers are done over the winter. So these are major components of crop production costs. Again, looking at those operating costs as well as the fixed costs that we need to deal with. So seed, again, depends on what variety hybrid you're going to pick. That can make a big difference in, if it's a $200 a bushel variety versus a $300 a bushel variety, depending on what you're doing. So pre-booking orders, a lot of that's already been done. So some seed companies offer a 10 to 15%, maybe more discount if you book with their varieties or their hybrids for next year already. So a lot of those deals have already been done before we even know how those hybrids performed and had yields. So you can save some money by pre-booking. It's just that if you're not happy with what you're getting out of the field, you might be a little bit ahead of the game in terms of making a decision. So some farmers might book 50% to 75% of their seeds. Some might book it all early in order to get the savings on that. So those inputs are a big part of it. The crop crop protection, that's basically your pest management. So diseases, insects, weeds, those kind of things that are going to be in that field. Are we going to cultivate more this year? Are we going to try to use less pesticides or try to change our pesticide program in order to keep these pests under control? So sometimes you can buy ahead knowing that there's a better price out there for certain products. So that's another input, is that pest management side of it, or crop protection. And then the crop nutrition. Can I pre-book fertilizer? So in the winter, they're looking at what can we afford to pre-book. We're going to use so many tons or so many gallons of fertilizer for what we're planning to grow this next year. And what's our nutrient management plan say? Again, going back to that soil test that we did in the fall and looking at all the results, that kind of thing. How much do we need to buy? How much manure is going to go out? Are we estimating, well, if our manure has got this much nutrient in it, maybe we can back off on the amount of fertilizer we're going to buy in the spring. So again, this winter time is more of a strategy session than anything to try to determine, can we save some dollars with the input side of things. And then training and certification. So finally, farmers maybe have some extra time in the winter to go through some education programs or attend some informational programs, get involved in some different types of training programs, that kind of thing. So they're offered throughout the state. They're already cranking up now. We look at extension, private industry, a lot of agencies offering types of meetings throughout the winter. And you're starting to see signups and registration things come out for that. Pesticide applicator training is a big one. So if any farmer is using restricted use pesticides, they by law have to have this license, and they will not be able to access certain restricted use pesticides without that training. And then Extension provides a manure applicator training program, which is voluntary, but it helps address those things again, like manure gas safety, confined spaces, application rates, setbacks, environmental types of things, those kind of things. So training and certification becomes a big part of their work as well. So, all right, we got through winter. Now we're into spring and summer. This is where we're starting to kind of prepare tractors, tillage, planting equipment, trying to get all of this back together pulled out, check it over, those kind of things, that making sure the equipment's ready to go into the field. A lot of seed and other early season inputs are coming in, so we're going to start to look at, storing our purchases if we're going to use a custom operator to apply the fertilizer, these kind of things. So you're going to start to get those things delivered in the spring as well. It's a time to evaluate the perennial crops. So this picture on the upper right-hand corner is alfalfa that's under a sheet of ice. Well, if that's what you saw in the winter, is it going to look like the lower picture in the spring, at this time of year? So in the spring, we want to see if did our perennial crops make it through the winter. So again, alfalfas, pasture, clovers, those kind of things, grassy fields that are used for hay harvest. Anything that maybe looked like it was under some stress in the winter, we're going to have to evaluate that in the spring to see, now do we have to change our whole crop rotation because the alfalfa field we thought we had is now dead, and we have to change. That's going to be corn this year, so now we got to replant. We got to buy more alfalfa seed, whatever it is. There's a lot of evaluation that goes on in that early May type of standpoint. A lot of planting going on, again, through manure application. We've already kind of talked about that. But there's also long days, and there might be some newer adaptive equipment that farmers might need as well. So when we look at preparing, again, it's looking at worn parts, oil filters, these kind of things, hydraulic hoses, is there a leak, and types of things, and maintaining all equipment so there's safe operation is the bottom line. And can be in addition to caring for dairy and cattle and livestock. So it gets very busy in the spring, especially for dairy and livestock producers, because in addition to doing their daily livestock care, now we got to get ready to put a crop in the ground. Again, talked about the receiving of the seed and other inputs. Again, the seed, fertilizer, that early season pest control. So there might be applications of, excuse me, some weed control that maybe escaped early in the spring. We want to control that. If we're no-tilling, do we have to control some weeds early so everything's got an even start? And this is when the costs begin to rack up. So again, going back to winter, we had a plan for how much we're going to spend on things, but that can be thrown out of whack based on what we're seeing coming out of winter. Again, evaluating those winter crops. If it looked like this in the winter, it's going to look like this in the spring. Do we have to renovate, terminate, those kind of things as we move forward throughout that spring season. This is the pictures we have on here. This is what you hope to get in the spring, is that lower right-hand corner. There can be a lot of nervous dairy farmers if it looks icy in the spring, or excuse me, over winter. Even winter kill, winter injury can be very costly, because now there's a cost of reseeding all of these fields that may have injury or winter kill to them that we hadn't planned for financially. And then again, back to manure application. That next window is there to empty that manure storage. Some farms have year-round storage, so they're able to store enough manure for a year. Others, they have enough storage for about 6 months. So it's empty now. They try to get through winter to when fields can be open to, the frost is out and fields are open to application. And so again, looking back at what we talked about earlier, all these things come back into play. The gases, a lot of transportation, and those manure spill risk will increase. So spring and fall, we usually see most of our application occurring at that point. And then newer adaptive equipment. Over the winter, has your labor supply changed? Do you need to hire anyone? Has anyone left the farm or joined the farm? Has there been a transition within the farm? So this is the time that maybe equipment is starting to look at, I lost one of my best employees a couple of weeks ago. Are we going to buy a bigger tractor? Are we going to try to be more efficient with the few pieces of labor we have left? Those kind of things. What about the overall health of that farmer? Healthy this fall, maybe not healthy next spring. Could be some, hopefully not chronic problems, but there can be joint issues, or if there's anything that happens, we're another year older, we don't feel as good, aches and pains are catching up to us. So farmers might be looking at how do we need some different equipment out there in order to continue to do our job. And then, are we more efficient or adaptive equipment needed, that assistance to keep farming? Again, what Michelle's project program provides. Might be something they need to look into if they say, well, we would like to farm another year, but dad or grandpa just can't get in the tractor like they used to. And so do we need to do something to help with that? The photo here, you notice there's no applicator. We're starting to see driverless tractors out there. Again, GPS guidance all in these fields. There's rumor in northwest Wisconsin. There's a farmer that has bought a driverless tractor, or someone looked in there and there was a tractor in the field doing some tillage, and there was no one in the tractor. It was being monitored, remotely. And so we are on the cusp of, I think, seeing driverless tractors being more common as labor becomes a problem on farms, or we can trust the technology. So again, just kind of fascinating that agriculture has moved in this direction. And again, spring through summer, we look at these longer days that are ahead. So we'll wrap up with summer to fall. Okay, what do we see as we wrap up our growing season? We're right in the middle of the growing season. We've made all our decisions. The crop's in the ground. Hopefully things are going well. This is when the bills for pest management really start to rack up. We have to manage diseases, insects, weeds, all these kind of things. So as we go through the growing season, did the products we use work? Do we need these products? Do we do a good job of if tillage was there to control some pests? Is this working? And so from crop protection, are there other products we need to purchase or apply in order to make things more healthy in the field? So the picture you have here, there's a sulfur deficiency in this specific corn leaf here. So do we have to apply more sulfur that we didn't budget for? These kind of things. Is there other additional fertility? We usually have to add nitrogen. Is our nutrient management plan calling for that? How does it look this season? We followed the plan, but things just aren't looking right. Do we have to do some other things? And then we get into forage and small grain harvesting. So you're going to see that throughout the summer as well. So success or failure, the weather is going to be the driver on a lot of it. Too wet, too hot, too cold, not warm enough, whatever it is. And then irrigation. The picture on the right, that was in the field across from my house. I thought it was kind of cool. Didn't turn out too well, but the irrigation system running at night. A lot of these run at night to try to be more efficient from evaporation. So we see some irrigation systems definitely running throughout the summer months. And then all of these things with planting and soil conditions, emergence, perennial crops developing. That's where the management, all the planning comes in, and now the real management comes in as far as, are we going to be able to get this crop to the finish line, or is the weather and Mother Nature going to cause a bigger problem? So if we've planted it correctly under good conditions, we've had good emergence, and perennial crops are developing well, we can at least be off to a good start. And then, the weather is what's really going to drive what's happening. So then this pest management thing, like I said, weeds, diseases, insects are the biggies. It can be a major input. We might be looking at a quarter of our cost of production might go into crop pest management. So do we need to control them, or have we done a good job of planning and we don't have the issues? We did some protection maybe last fall with some of the perennial weeds, these kind of things. Do we need to hire a custom applicator in order to put our pest control, our crop protection products on? Are we going to use is the farmer certified to use some certain products, application that way type of thing? Is there an outbreak we didn't plan for? 2025, this last year, Northwest Wisconsin had an true armyworm outbreak in certain parts of the area. So armyworm can suddenly show up. We got monitors and traps, and we can get an idea of what's happening from an insect standpoint. But sometimes these populations can explode in a relative short amount of time. Maybe there's a new pest that comes along that we're going to have to deal with that we've been watching, and now suddenly it's here. Tar spot was one that we've had maybe within the last 10 years, but it's really raised its head within the last few years that farmers have had to really watch for and control for it. So again, another input in order to manage a pest that's suddenly shown up. So synthetic products, price volatility. Are these products cheaper? Are they more expensive now in season versus out of season? Can we plan for purchasing these kind of things? And then again, resistance. So some of these synthetic products we've used way too much. And so now we've got water hemp that is resistant to certain products. Corn rootworms are resistant to certain traits from a genetically modified standpoint. So we're starting to lose some of the tools that we thought, oh, well, we've got this product that can control it, and now it doesn't. The plant or the insect has found a way to manipulate itself build up resistance, and we now no longer have control for it. So pest management again can be a major input to some of these for some of these farms. From an organic standpoint, cultivation. There's no resistance to steel. If we're out in a garden with a hoe, you can pretty much get that weed out of there. Same thing with farmers. They can go through with a cultivator and get that weed out of there. Many are relying, again, more on synthetic products, but we have this pest control side of things from the organics that we can use cultivation, electric weed control. If you've ever watched one of these things, it's fascinating. There's a big generator on the back, and there's a big copper bar. You can kind of see it in here, but this generator creates, I think, I can't remember, 10,000 volts or 20,000 volts of electricity. And when the plant hits it, it zaps it, and you can kind of see where it burns it here. And you can see how some of these plants have tipped over within a few minutes of being zapped by this electric weed control. Flaming and cover crops as well. Flaming basically does the same thing. You kind of try to get those plants when they're little, those weeds are little, and you basically burn them. And then cover crops, we could try to crimp some cover crop over the top, kind of forms like a mulch over top and prevents those weeds from coming through. Again, costs money. This piece of equipment, or if you're crimping rye, there's a lot of input costs, and you got to think about that as you go forward with your crop production budget. Again, crop protection, we usually use economic thresholds. Is it going to pay to put this on or not? Am I going to get the return? Am I going to protect my yield? Those kind of things. Fungicides are kind of popular. There's a good return when the disease is present, but it can be a coin flip when it's not. Is this going to pay or not? It's 50-50. I might be throwing money down the drain. It might protect my crop and be worth putting the application on. Biologicals, again, some of these to encourage biological control of some of the pests. Some of these we have some good research, some we don't. We need to have more solid research on some of these. Some of the biological industry has just exploded with private industry saying, yeah, this product will work. But the UW or other land grant universities are still in some of the research stages of, do these biologicals work and under what conditions do they work? And then some of these products are essential, non-essential. There's new products every year coming out. And that's where hopefully the UW or some of our other land grant partners can get the research out that says, yeah, this product does work under these conditions, so it's maybe worth the money if you have this pest at a certain point. Additional fertility, more input cost, more nitrogen needed, maybe not. What about the foliar nutrient applications that we have? Is it needed? Is it not? Tissue sampling, all of these things add a cost, but if you can fine tune, if I need this fertilizer or this nutrient added, is it going to pay or not? This chart I have here is basically what we call a maximum return to nitrogen. And so we look at the price of corn, what the ratio is to the price of nitrogen. We find a range, and then this kind of tells us what our soil type is, high or medium, what we're growing, how much nitrogen should we need to apply under that condition. So when we have, low commodity prices, high nitrogen prices, which is where we're kind of headed, we might see farmers starting to cut back on nitrogen specifically, simply because it's not going to return the value for the investment. And then as we wrap up forage and small grain harvest, you're going to see alfalfa hay harvest going on in that throughout the summer. Generally see 3 or 4 cuttings. That first cutting occurs maybe late May, early June. So you'll see a mowing, and then there would be a merger where they'll try to rake these mergers together. And then there's chopping, and then the packing that goes into those bunkers and things like that. Very intensive, about every 30 days, roughly once a month, they're harvesting alfalfa or some kind of hay for either hay or haylage. Haylage is basically not dry. It's going in and fermenting just like it would in a silo, but in most farms are going with these piles, packing them with this large equipment, and then putting a cover on it with a lot of tires to hold the plastic down. It's a little more efficient way to store this forage as well as feed it out. And so all of this mowing, raking, chopping, hauling, storing, and then feeding out. So forage management can be very expensive. Can be for, again, grain harvest. Small grains are usually ready. Again, winter, spring wheats, the barleys, the rye, the oats. These kind of come into play in that winter time. And so most of that's going to be harvested late July, early August with very similar equipment that we would use for soybean harvest. And then last couple slides here, looking at corn silage harvest, the whole plant is chopped. Now, what you're seeing out there now is a combine out in that field, just taking the ears off, drying it, just the grain part. But silage, you're taking the whole plant. You're chopping that whole plant down into large trucks, wagons. There's only one cut. You cut it, the crop's done for the year, and then you're stored again in those piles or bunkers, like I saw in the earlier uh, picture. But there's still some tower silos being used. So we see these monuments to the dairy industry out there yet. And some of them are still being used on some of those farms. So corn silage harvest kind of brings us full circle from where we started our season, where we are today. So again, back to today, year round. It's very seasonal here in Wisconsin. So again, what's going on is going to change from month to month, day to day sometimes. Requires a lot of inputs with labor and equipment intensive in order to get these crops to where they need to go. And then the management is to be profitable, controlling those input costs, looking for opportunities to market it, especially on the commodity side or feed and inventory, watching where those cattle are going and how much they're eating. And hopefully, if we're profitable, the farmer's still on the landscape and can do it all again next year. So with that, that's what I'm wrapping up with. I think Michelle's got a couple of things, but in extension, we try to evaluate our teaching a little bit. So there is a QR code if anyone wants to scan that. I would appreciate any input. That's in addition to the evaluation that Michelle has. So we kind of talked about that earlier. There's a link. I don't know if Michelle's got it in the chat, but you can also just take a picture or scan this QR code, and it should take you to about a 3 or 4 question evaluation with some slider tool types of things. So, Michelle, I'll wrap it up, and if there's any questions, I can take them.